we go in here to edit, and we go to the bottom to preferences. Actually, I'm going to go out of the trash folder first. We'll go back to home menu when we do that. So we'll go down here to preferences, and you can see these are the preferences for Nemo, and they have all sorts of categories here. So your view, it says view new folders using. So if you want to change your default view away from the icon view, maybe you prefer list view or compact view, then you can do that here. You just click and choose which one. And that will apply to all folders and directories that you have not manually changed to a different view. So, and it says inherent view type from parent. So that's another option you can check. So for that example, like if I was in, the videos, and I say, okay, well, I want everything in here to look just like my home folder. Well, then you can do that, and it will go from videos to whatever, and it will keep whatever view this section looks like here. And it says arrange items, so you can change your arrangement by default here. So if you want all your stuff to be arranged by size by default, you can set that here, and then that will be the default arrangement, versus when you right clicked on it to arrange, you're only modifying the arrangement for that particular folder. So that's the difference there. And it says you can reverse it. It says sort folders before files, so you can toggle that on or off. If you want folders to appear first and then files to appear after that, that's the default behavior. But you can uncheck this, and then it would sort by whatever. It would just ignore the fact that there's a difference between folders and files, and it would sort them all by whatever you specified. And it says sort favorites before other files. So if you use the favorites feature, that can be helpful because it will put your favorites up on top, so you don't have to move around very much in the folder to get to them. But you can disable that as well if you don't prefer that behavior. Now it says icon view defaults. So when you're in the icon view, which is what we were looking at here, you can pick the default zoom level, and here it's 100%. You can choose between the various options that you can pick on the slider. It's just here they're represented numerically by percentages. And it says text besides icons. So if you enable that, you can see there, instead of having the text beneath your icons, it actually puts it off to the side. So if you prefer them that way, that's an option for you as well. It says compact view defaults. So the compact view is this one here, where it just had the names and that was it. So you can set the default zoom level there. And it says there's a checkbox here for all columns have the same width. So you can do that if by default it will make them try to match the file name length. So if you have a really long name, it might take up like half your screen by default. But if you want them to just take up the same exact amount, you can do that checkbox there. And then the list view was the one in the middle. That was where it gave some more details, like the modified date and the file size and all that. And you can change the default zoom level there as well. And it starts at 50%, so it starts out really small, as we saw, but you can change that by default as well. And the tree view defaults say show only folders. So if you wanted to show more than just folders, like your individual files in the tree view over here, when we selected that, so it's talking about this view here, you could uncheck that and it would show more than just the folders. I can show you an example of that in the videos here. So you can see it says videos, OBS recordings, and then it's empty. So if I uncheck that, now you can see it actually shows the individual files that are inside that folder as well. So that's an option for you if you prefer that as well. Alright, and then the next section, behavior. So here's where you can change a lot of preferences about how Nemo works, how your file manager works here. So by default, this is double click to open items. If you prefer to only single click, you can change that here. And you also have other options here. It says click on a file's name twice to rename it. So you can check that if you'd like. That's something that's pretty common in Windows behavior, but by default, Linux Mint does not work that way. By default, the way to rename a file is right click on it and choose rename. That's the easy way. And then, for these two at the start, you can see there's a circle. That's called a radio button. And what that means is you can only pick one or the other. Versus a checkbox, you can toggle as many of these as you prefer. So that's generally how that works there. So just in case anyone didn't know there was a difference there. So we can check each one of these individually if you prefer. So there's other options are open each folder in its own window. So that every time you go to open a folder, it will pop it open in a new window if you prefer. This one says always start in dual pane view. So if you want to do that, that's an option for you there. And there's a checkbox here that says ignore per folder view preferences. So if you want to use the global settings, the settings that you set here for views, you can click this and it will always adhere to whatever you set in the preferences here, and it won't care what you say about your individual folder views. Like, it won't remember the individual folder views as you go through it. So the next option here is disable file operation queuing. I'm not even sure what that one does, to be honest. And below that, there's double click on a blank area to go to the parent folder. So that's interesting. I've never even seen that behavior. I didn't know that was an option, but apparently, yeah, you can double click just over here if you want to basically hit the equivalent of this up to the parent folder button there. You are able to do that. This next section here says executable text files. So for executable text files, it says ask each time. That's the default behavior. But if you wanted to do something specific every single time, you could do one of these two options instead here. It says run executable text files when they are opened, or view executable text files when they are opened. Otherwise, it will just ask you which of these things you want to do when you try to use an executable text file. That won't be very commonly for most people to use executable text files. In fact, there's probably a lot of people that will never use them, but every great once in a while you may run into something related to that. But by default, it will just ask you, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue either way. Next, we have some settings for the trash, and it says ask before moving files to the trash. So by default, that's turned off, but you can turn it on, and then it will prompt you just in case you didn't want to trash an item. It's like, are you sure you want to trash this? And so there's another thing here for the checkbox that is on by default. It says ask before emptying the trash or deleting files. So this is a fail-safe. This is kind of like a last-minute warning. Are you sure you want to delete that? It will prompt you just in case. It's basically just one more step to help you not do something by accident that you didn't intend to do. And then this option here is what I was talking about before. It says include a delete command that bypasses trash. So by default, this is there. I like to personally check that one off because I don't like to have the delete command there. If you like to have it there, that's fine. You can leave it there, and it will stay there. But you can uncheck that, and then it will not show up on here when you delete. Now you can see the only option here is move to trash. So the nice part about that is you need one more step before you completely delete that file, and that would be going into the trash and emptying it. So me personally, because I've made mistakes in the past and regretted, accidentally hitting the wrong thing or whatever, I personally prefer to leave that off so that it does not have that option at all. And then at the bottom here it says bypass the trash when the delete key is pressed. So that's another one that's off by default. And if you'd like, it's talking about the delete key on your keyboard. You can basically, what that will do if you enable it is it pretty much will delete just like this delete command does. It will skip the trash. It's just deleted, and that's up to you if you want to configure your system that way. You're able to. Media handling options down here. It says automatically mount removable media when inserted and on startup. So I'll probably discuss that a little bit more, but mounting just means that it shows up ready to be used, basically, as far as Linux is concerned. And it says automatically open a folder for auto-mounted media. So the default behavior there is basically you plug in, say, a USB flash drive or something. It will mount it by default, and it will show up over here in the devices. And then it will say automatically open a folder. So it will open that device as its own folder view, just in a new window. And then at the bottom here it says prompt or auto run, auto start programs when media are inserted. So that's a little more specific, but if you do have something where that would apply, it will do the prompts or do an auto run, whatever, when you insert it. But most of the cases, that probably won't apply for most things that you go to use, especially if like storage drives or things like that. It'll just open as a folder and you'll get to view its contents and things like that. So, and then lastly, it says automatically close the device's tab, pane, or window when a device is unmounted or ejected. So that's an optional thing that you can toggle if you'd like. It's off by default. And then at the bottom here, there's a bulk rename option related setting. It says command to invoke when renaming multiple items. And by default, it's bulky, which is kind of amusing to me. But so bulk rename, that can come in very useful, but it's a little more involved in Linux to use that, or at least it was last time I tried to do it. Maybe now they have it a little easier, more streamlined, but there is, if you want to change that command for some reason, you can, right in there in the preferences. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn even more, you can find my books at bookstoread.com/Jonathan. That's books, the number 2, read.com/JONATHAN.